Shukla here, your host and host, your mentor, and today we are going to talk about the ISO 7547. Yes, you have heard it right. This is also one of the module in my mega course for oil and gas HVAC. Now you all must be wondering that why I have chosen this particular standard and what is so special about this standard that sir is talking about it and what is it all about. Yes, since I have selected this particular standard for this particular course, it has a very strong significance. And let me tell you, unless you understand this standard, you really cannot proceed with your HVAC design. Yes, you're right. And what is the standard all about? This standard talks about the HVAC system, that is heating, ventilation, air conditioning system design basis for the marine installations. When I say marine, it's all about the ships. I have already explained in my previous module the types of ships and what is a ship and what category it comes in. All categories are ships, whatever the ship may be, falls under this particular standard, ISO 7547. With any interview you go, you should keep this in your mind. ISO 7547. This is your Bible when you are designing any ship air conditioning. And when I say ship air conditioning, you know what I mean. Ship air conditioning is ship air conditioning. So we are going today provision of each and every provision of ISO 7547, what it means, how many air changes it recommends, what temperature it recommends, why it recommends, what are the other things need to be considered, what are the ventilation rate to be considered. We need to consider everything as per this 7547. Remember. So, but don't worry, I'm going to explain you each and every provision one by one. And one more thing, when you're going to do this case study, definitely this will help you. All the standard rates you need to mug up completely. So you know which value to be used where. For the offshore installation, oil and gas installation, you have another standard that is ISO 15138. That is for the fixed installations. As you know, this marine installations are applicable for the oil and gas also, where there are the ships which are the oil tankers or ships which are the FPSO, that is floating production and offloading vessels, that is FPSO vessels. So FPSO vessels also have an accommodation for that. This standard is applicable, and wherever there are fixed oil and gas platforms are there, where you have a technical building or you have LQ or both, in that place you have to apply ISO 15138, but that is we are going to cover in another module. That is going to be a mega module, but this module also you need to understand very patiently, and you need to analyze by yourself. You need to take a note of it, and notes will help you, to be honest. So be prepared with your notes. So when you apply it, you will understand where to apply and why not to apply. So with that, we are going to go to the next one. This particular slide, we are going to discuss about the HVAC calculation basis. To begin with, what it contains, what it not contains. So you should read it very carefully. Whatever is written here is very important. It in short defines the scope of this standard. You know, in which cases it is applicable and which cases it is not applicable. So let's go one by one here. As this name suggests, the standard ISO 7547 is ships and marine technology, air conditioning and ventilation of accommodation spaces, design conditions and basis of calculation. Here you need to remember that when I say this applicable to the ships, first of all, this standard is not applicable for the offshore structure, this oil and gas structure. That is a separate standard which we are going to check afterwards in the next or subsequent modules. But when we talk about this standard, this is applicable to the ships, and not only to the ships, the accommodation part of the ship where people are going to stay. The captain is going to stay, the cabin crew is going to stay. Those particular accommodation which is on the ship, those people who are taking care of the ship, those people who are running the ship, those people, entire crew, what we say, which is on the ship, where they stay, that particular part, air conditioning only, this standard talks about. It specifies the design conditions and the calculation methods for various marine species. It talks about design conditions, the temperature to be considered in the room, all those things, and calculation, how to do the calculations, the U factor, how to calculate. All these things this particular standard talks about for the marine spaces, for the ships, that also for the accommodation part. Second, applicable except for the extremely hot or extremely cold climate as stated in various sections subsequent to this standard. When we say extremely hot or extremely cold, what does it mean? Extremely hot means anything more than 35 degrees Celsius ambient. This standard considers as an extremely hot. And anything less than minus 20 degrees Celsius, this standard considered as extremely cold. Then this is an ISO standard which is worldwide recognized. No other standard in marine industry or anywhere, even ASHRAE, defines the design conditions or calculation criteria for the marine species. So this is the only standard which we need to follow for calculation of the marine species for the ships. Then it talks about is limited to the specifying design basis for HVAC calculations for the marine sector. This means that the scope of standard, this particular standard, it doesn't go beyond the calculation methods. It doesn't talk about the safety and other issues and the health and safety and quality issue. No, it talks about only and only about the design calculation methods for the various marine species. So one should not get confused over here. Last is statutory and local requirement always prevails. It means that whatever the statutory requirement, if there suppose the ship is flagged for the Panama registration or whichever registration it has to follow, whatever the local regulations are there, those come first and then the ISO comes later. But I'm sure no other local is specifying any stand over here. So this is just for the safety reason they have mentioned this statement. So in short, you need to follow the standard for the ships while we are designing for the air conditioning of the marine spaces of the ship. Clear? Let's move to the next one. This particular slide talks about the annexures to ISO 7547. This particular standard has several annexures, that is A, B, C, D, E, built in this particular standard. Earlier, each of the annexures was having its separate standard, but now they have combined it into the one standard they have mentioned it as an annexure. For example, annexure A, B, C talks about different aspects of the design. So let's take one by one what annexure A contains, and I'm going to cover it in the subsequent lectures itself. What is annexure A, B, C in detailed way. Annexure A talks about and provides guidance and details of good practices in design of ventilation and air conditioning systems in the ship. That I'm going to cover it. Then Annexure B, it covers and it gives a thermal conductivities of commonly used construction material in marine. Then Annexure C, it applies to the special consideration in machinery control rooms. Annexure D talks about document special requirement of the wheelhouse. Wheelhouse is a place where the captain is shipping and controlling the ships. So what is the HVAC requirement for that? And what are the considerations we need to do? That everything is covered in Annexure D. Then Annexure E talks about the special considerations for the dry provision stores. Dry provision store or dry provision rooms are the rooms where you are going to keep your dry foods, like pickles, and the places where you don't anything which doesn't need refrigeration. Normal air conditioning can work. Those are all the things, or wheat or something. Wheat, don't have to keep the wheat boxes mm, somewhere in the refrigeration. Nobody keeps. Or rice. So these are the places which are kept in the dry provision store. It's also very important. So the air conditioning requirement for that also is considered as a part of this particular annexure E. So this is what the annexure it covers, and we are going to see it one by one. Let's move to the next slide. These are the typical GA layouts of the marine structure. I'm going to definitely, it's only a rough to give an idea. And when we do this case study thing, then definitely you will have a broader idea in broader sense how it works. So this is just to give an idea that the rooms and how it looks and what does the cabin means, what does this mess room means, so what are the various areas it contains. So anyway, in subsequent lectures, I'm going to cover it, which are the major areas in the marine sector. So you will have some idea about it. The accommodation, it's very, very interesting one.